Incident at Whaley Lake. Here is what happened to myself and my best friend back in the summer of 1984. The interaction we experienced took place on Whaley Lake in Holmes, New York, southern Dutchess County. This event happened right after one of the incidents at the Indian Point nuclear facility, which is about 30 miles southwest of our location. I and my best friend decided to go out to look at the stars as it was clear that night, so at dusk, around 8:30, we got in a small aluminum rowboat powered by an electric motor and set out across the lake towards the train tracks, 1/3 mile east. There was a lot of activity in the sky, such as heat, lightning, planes, and what sounded like the end of a fireworks show far off in the distance, the low thud-type explosions. After about a 20-minute ride in the boat, we were looking in opposite directions of the sky, and I saw a searchlight scanning the railroad tracks on the south middle side of the lake. I told my friend, who laughed and said I was seeing things. Then I told him it was back, and this time he saw it also. When we discovered there was no sound and therefore no helicopter or plane for it to come from, we freaked out, and then it vanished. I can estimate that the distance from our boat to the railroad tracks that were searched by this light was less than 200 feet, more likely closer. Bear in mind that on a lake at night, we can hear people speaking in a normal voice across the lake as sound carries, and there are very few houses in that location. I remember it as a white light, and it was shining down and moving as if it were searching the tracks, then looking up and wondering where the hell it was coming from. After we talked about this, we headed north between the big island, houses on it, and the tracks. Further north you go, there are no houses on that side of the lake, about a half mile. We passed the end of the island and continued north and saw an incredible bright fluttering light that was about 15 to 20 feet above the tracks and coming out of the woods, and my immediate thought was, oh, it's a train, which quickly turned to fear as it stopped at the edge of the tracks in the water and again, not a sound at all. So my friend and I turned off the putt-putt motor, as we called it, and were wondering what the hell it was, and by now we were very scared. I was 19 and my friend was the same age. After watching for a short while, we decided to turn the motor, electric, and headed right towards it. As soon as we began to move, it began to move directly towards us, and before we met, we turned the boat around and retreated, and the light did the same. Now let me try to describe the light. It was the brightest thing I have ever seen, and although it was stationary, it was in constant motion, fluttering white, amber, and green. These are the colors I recall, a sort of fireball more than an object. We again headed towards the light, and it again headed to us. We chickened out again. At last, we said, let's go for it and see what happens, and this time we met somewhere in the middle. The light went around the boat, and I could not see it. I asked my friend where it was. At this time, he was illuminated by a light, and I could feel heat on my back shoulder, and my friend cried out, "It's behind you." I would estimate it was 15 feet behind the boat and about that same height off the water, give or take a few feet. I asked my friend what he felt like as this light was still on him, and he replied almost in tears that it felt like every molecule in his body was being vibrated. We were terrified, and I would say the time from the time we saw the light flying down the train tracks until it disappeared was 15 to 20 minutes, perhaps 5 minutes directly at the boat fluttering around it. I just remember it being gone and only seeing a light. My friend also had a sense of craft. Some other points are as follows. This all happened not far from the island where we could hear people talking and enjoying themselves on a nice summer night on the lake, and it was as if no one saw it. We were maybe 1/3 of a mile away. At one point we were yelling. We headed back to the lake house, and when we got in the house, the light was on, the boombox was on, a tape was playing, and it was stuck, like repeating itself. There's no way we left either on, as we had just gotten in trouble with my stepfather, who owns the house, for going out and leaving the lights on. No other family members were home. And then there's the timeline. It was around midnight when we got home, yet we estimated that the entire boat ride should have been 90 minutes, and we left around 8:30 at dusk, maybe 8:45. I am 41 years old and own and operate a small masonry business. I have lost track of my friend since 1989. I did locate him in the fall of 2006, and after not speaking for 17 years, he answered the phone, and within 15 minutes I got right to that interaction we had and asked him to recall any and every detail. He did it as if it were last week. We both witnessed the exact same thing and were within 15 feet of it. We have never reported this to any authorities, and if I were alone, I would be convinced I was insane. I have always considered getting hypnotized to have a tape recording of perhaps more details, but I never have. I have always tried to convince myself our timeline is off and no missing time exists, but my friend, who recalled more vivid details and exact times, is positive we were not out that long.